Here we go, class number 2 with in the 4 most important marketing strategies for coaches in 2019 and beyond. We've got a handout here for you to follow along. Our last class, we talked about you. We talked about finding the value in your story. And so if you did the homework, hopefully you did, then you wrote down a few things about your life that you've experienced that taught you lessons, and you identified what those lessons were. And for now, you just said, if I could only teach one thing for the rest of my life, it would be this thing. So that's strategy number 1. Even though it might not sound like a strategy, it's actually a strategy to market your story in a transparent way. I'm not going to ask you to do this in this course, but in my bigger course of the full foundations of marketing, one of the assignments that I give people is to do an about me story. And I put a link in, I don't know if it was in the last handout. I think it's somewhere on the page, or it was in the comments of the last handout or the last class, and we can link to it. You can find it on my website, coachjonsmith.com, and just click on about. And if you can read my full story, that story, it wasn't strategic for me to write this story and come up with signature programs and get booked for speeches. And like, I didn't have any of that in my awareness at the time, but that story really did open up so much for me. And I had already been doing this work for a while, but when I sat down and actually took inventory of who I was, and this was shortly after I had filed bankruptcy, where I needed to like pick myself back up and ask, what is it that I want to do and what value do I have? When you come out of, at least when I came out of this financial ruin, I had lost so much of my own sense of value that I needed to get that back. And this about me story was one of the ways that I did that. And I can tell you that that single story can easily be tied to several $100,000 of business, including a 2.5-week speaking tour in India. It produced my signature story about my father jumping off a curb and his final words to me. And actually, it's the story that I won a speaking contest against thousands of people with, North America's Next Greatest Speaker. All of that came out of this about me story. And I wasn't expecting that. I didn't write it because of all of that. But I learned how incredibly important it can be to realize the value that you have. And Michelle is on the line here. Many of you know her. We identified that her biggest shift from perpetual student to now becoming a teacher was writing this story, was writing the about me story and realizing I've learned a lot of lessons, and I've got a lot to teach people. So this is a very critical component for us to shift into teaching, for us to shift into leadership. And I mentioned in class number 1 that there's this thought out in the marketplace by several people that your value only comes in your skills. That's not true, in my opinion. That's not true. And what we're going to do in this class is take this personal inventory and then go into the next strategy. And if you've looked at the handout, you know what that is. The next piece here is your seeker. Your seeker. Now, a lot of people talk about finding your ideal client, identifying your target market, or identifying your avatar. There's a lot of different words and phrases that mean that person. And then I had a shift one day, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I realized it just didn't feel good for me to identify a target and then go after the target. Before I go on, I see a comment. Bridget said, the story is so hard for me to write. First of all, thank you for sharing that. It was not easy for me to write either. I just said it was profound and led to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I can't promise that it'll lead anybody to any amount of money, let alone as much money as it has led me, but it will activate something inside you, I promise. And I'll say this with advocacy and love. If it's hard to write, that means it must be done, because that's not natural for us to have this negative relationship to our own story, especially if you believe what I firmly believe after 15 years, that our own story is actually going to be one of the most inviting, attractive pieces in our marketing. And so you don't want to have any negative relationship with shame or guilt or any of those kinds of negative judgments toward your story. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be super easy and you're going to giggle and laugh. And I mean, it really caused me to look at who I am. But the thing is, when you look at who you are and where you've become or where you've come, what happens at some point is you detach your value from your story. We are not our stories. We are a character of the story. And this character has learned lessons from the story. And we need to separate those so that we can take the lessons and then cleanly offer them to other people and help them. So hopefully that's landing for you and anybody else that can relate to it. And I found in personal development, especially if you want to be a coach, whenever there's resistance around something that has to do with you, your past, your circumstances, your beliefs, whenever there's resistance around that, that means you gotta go there. You gotta lean into that, right? The resistance means there's something that needs to come out of you. That's why the resistance is actually there. That's why it's hard to do this, to do some of this work at an emotional level. And if you need more support than that, then please reach out to us. No one has ever explained. Oh, cool. Yeah, see, that's the thing. And that's why we're afraid of our story. We're afraid of telling our story because we're not telling the lessons of the story. We're just telling the victim story. And a lot of us don't want to tell the victim story because we don't want to feel like we're a victim, and we're not out for a pity party, and we're not out for any of that stuff. But we have to extract the lessons. And one of the things that's so critical with our past is that our value, if you believe me, our value is found in our lessons. Our lessons were taught from adversity. All the biggest lessons were taught through adversity all the time when it comes to our personal life. So it's our adverse lessons. If you remember what I said in class number 1, lessons learned through adversity. It's our adversity that creates the lessons that gives us value both in our life to learn and value as a coach. And if you're grateful for having the lessons to teach people, then you can't be irritated at the teacher of the lessons. So I like to say you can't be hateful toward the teacher and grateful for the lessons, or vice versa. You can't be grateful for the lessons and hateful toward the teacher. So these lessons are where we get our value. So we need to embrace everything that taught us that and be willing to tell that story, but we're standing on top of the story. We're not inside the story. And the value is inside of our character, not inside of our circumstances. So I don't remember where I was going when I kind of went on a tangent there. Does anybody remember where I was? Yes, vulnerability is absolute strength. Vulnerability is where people see themselves in you. I was talking about seeker, and I just had this thought one day that I didn't like the idea that I was chasing somebody, that I was putting a target and then I was going to go after them. And I don't remember what the catalyst was, if it was just a download or if I read something or heard something or what have you. But then I just thought, there are already people out there that are looking for what I know. So they are already seeking what I have inside of the lessons that I've learned. They're already seeking that stuff. So now I just need to find them. And the energy shifts. So now instead of me going after them, they're already looking for me. Already. So then the question is, am I going to answer their call or not? To me, that was a complete 180-degree turn. When I started thinking of, there's already somebody out there right now that's dying to read an article with the lessons because they need it in their life right now. And then it was like, all right, well, let me get it in front of them. Instead of, let me identify who the target is that I'm going to shoot after and then go get them, right? Like rope them like cattle, right? And then I'm going to convince them that they need my thing. I don't want to convince anybody that they need my thing. I want to give the thing that they're already looking for. So that shift is what produced what I call the seeker. And so you'll hear me all the time say, who's your seeker? And I'll refer to your seeker as the one that you're here to serve. And a lot of times we can find leverage in our seeker to help us get over our obstacles. So I think I already went through some of these bullets. The first bullet on page number 1 is identify who is already seeking the lessons you can teach. Already is the key word because you don't have to create desire. The desire is already there. Not only is the desire there, but they're already chasing it. What a lot of people do is they decide what they want to teach and then try to convince people to buy the thing that they want to teach. I don't want you to teach what you want to teach. I want you to serve what they want to learn. And that's different. It's different energetically. If any of you have been in the restaurant business or bartending or any of those kinds of service businesses, you don't come up and just try to sell people your favorite thing on the menu, what you want them to eat because it's going to make you the most amount of money. You ask them, what do they want? And then they'll tell you and you serve it to them. That's really the process here. And here's the thing. It's so much easier to do it that way. It's so much easier to identify what they want to learn, who is already looking for the lessons that you already have, and then just get in front of them. Energetically, it shifted so much for my business. Bullet number 2, I already mentioned your energy goes from chasing to serving. And for most of us that are sensitive, most of us that might be introverted, most of us that just aren't really succeeding according to the rules of marketing and sales, I make a distinction. I didn't really talk about this in the first class. I make a distinction between sharks and dolphins. Most marketing is being taught from a shark perspective. Now, I'm not saying that sharks are bad people, that they're out to take people's money. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that sharks and dolphins are very similar animals. They have similar body shapes. They swim in similar areas. They have similar coloring, right? But they're actually really different. A dolphin is a mammal, breathes air. A shark is a fish that breathes water. A shark's body goes side to side. A shark's tail is vertical so it can flap side to side. A dolphin's body goes up and down. A dolphin's tail is horizontal so it can flap up and down. They eat different things. They have different needs, but they look very similar. So a distinction that I make in the marketing world is if you're a dolphin, don't go to shark school. Don't try to learn how sharks market. And I would say the same thing to sharks, but no sharks pay attention to me because I filter them out. They don't like me, right? But if I was talking to a shark, I would say the same thing. Don't go to dolphin school because you're a shark. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. What I do believe is that most of us are dolphins. And you're a dolphin if the ways of marketing just don't work for you. If you don't want to just follow this one-size-fits-all approach and you're not a vendor selling vending products, as I was saying in the first class, then you need to do this another way. So as a dolphin, you're going to be much more driven by service rather than ego, as we talked about in the first class. And then you can do a lot of the same things, a lot of the fundamentals of marketing, but you have to do it your way. You have to market your message as a dolphin, not as a shark. And see, if you follow the sharks and then try to market to the dolphins, that's not going to work either. One of the reasons that sharks are successful is because they teach other sharks how to market in a shark way to other sharks. Nothing wrong with that unless you're not a shark, right? And again, I'm not saying sharks, they're out to take people. I'm not using that negative connotation. I'm just saying that's one path and this is another path. So if you're a dolphin, you have to dive into service, and then asking yourself, who's already looking for me is going to be easier than who can I go make money from? Since class number 1, I've been seeing so many ads that kind of remind me of some of the things we were talking about. I saw an ad the other day that said, how to make people buy your product. And I was like, it just felt so nasty to me. Like, how to take somebody who's wouldn't otherwise buy your product unless you say these words. And they used a phrase like sales hacks or something like that. Like here's a sales hack that will make people buy your product. That's not my energy. I was immediately turned off. And so if you try to market from that same template of a shark, but you don't match their product and you don't match their energy and your values don't match their values, and what drives you isn't the same thing that drives them, then you just can't follow that system. So this shifts everything. And this idea of locking into your seeker is not easy for most people to do. This is one of the reasons why I take a lot of time explaining it and explaining why this is so valuable, both for you and for them, because there will be resistance. And we'll dive into more of the resistance as I keep going here in this course. But there will be resistance, I promise you. And I'll explain to you why the resistance is important. And I'll explain to you how I suggest you get around that resistance. But now if we identify, here's a single person, they're already seeking something, and you have the thing that some people are seeking. And see, that's why I asked you in the first class, what are the things that you've experienced in your life that taught you lessons? And here's what I know. You're not the only one. Unless you are the only human being that has ever experienced that circumstance, there are more people that are going through it right now or have already gone through it, and they don't know how to release themselves from those chains. That's why I asked you, what have you gone through? What lessons do you have? Because there are people that need those lessons. Now the question is, are you going to get in front of them? So the next piece here, bullet number 3 in the handout is, let's say you sold hot dogs. Let's say you bought a hot dog stand. This is a famous marketing question. Where's the best place to put a hot dog stand? And go ahead and answer, for those of you that are on live, where's the best place to put a hot dog stand? And in the contemplation of this question, we usually get too complicated. We get really clever, but we usually get way too complicated. Because we think of like movie theater or right in front of a baseball park, or I'm trying to remember some of the other answers that I get. But the best place to go is what Christiane and Michelle said. Put it right next to a successful hot dog stand. Because what do we know? There are hot dog eaters that gather here. So now you take your version and you just give them another option. Now you're not chasing people down going into the movies and convincing them that they should want a hot dog. Some of them might be vegan and turn around and punch you. You know, you're convincing the vegans that they should try your hot dogs. Well, the vegans won't be walking up to the hot dog stand unless it's a vegan hot dog stand maybe. But the point is, you're not going to be trying to convince people that they are hungry for your thing. You're just going to go where those hungry people are already gathering. That's the shift here. So you identify who's seeking your content and your lessons, and you get in front of them. Today's marketing world, the next bullet, is hyper individualized. This is why we have to do this. It's hyper individualized. When you click on an ad, that ad is going to follow you. Many of you already know that. It's called retargeting, cookies. You click on something on your phone a lot of times, and the next time you open up your computer, the thing you clicked on the phone will have an ad in front of you on Facebook or on internet sites. I remember I was looking into a marketing program many years ago, and I was on this joke site, like what's the funniest joke ever? And I saw an ad for the guy's marketing program, and I was blown away. Like, why would he be marketing on joke sites? But the reality was he wasn't marketing on the joke site. He was following me. That was like way back when this thing called retargeting just started out. But the point is, you go to YouTube, you got all the suggested videos based on your browsing history. Netflix, all the suggested shows based on what you've already watched. We live in a society where now people are being marketed to individually based on their choices and their previous purchases and their buying history, their browsing history. Amazon is one of the first ones, to my knowledge, that really understood this. And that's one of the reasons why they blew up. Oh, you like this? And I know you like that too. Well, here, let me put them in a combo package for you. So people are now expecting that they see the things that they're already interested in. And when the market expects something, we can't afford to try to change their minds and to try to change their buying habits. So we have to identify as best we can and really get to know this individual person and what do they want, because that's how they're consuming information and that's how they're being marketed to already. So today's marketing world is hyper individualized. And one of the reasons that we have to go after their individual desires is so that they can self-select in or out. If you just have a general marketing message, I don't know if your message is for me or not. But if you have a message that says, hey, if you're a mid-40s-year-old man with 2 kids and a 20-plus-year marriage, this might be helpful for you. I'm like, whoa, she's talking directly to me. I'm clicking on that. But then if your message is, if you're a middle-aged woman who has no kids, you're looking to get into a relationship, I know that's not for me. And you don't want me to think it's for me if I'm really not the person that you want to serve the most. So that's one of the reasons why it's so critical that we deliver these hyper individualized messages so people can self-select out or self-select in. And when people self-select in, they're already leaning forward because you're speaking directly to them. That's what we want them to believe, that we're speaking directly to them. Now, why is it such a good idea to go after an earlier version of yourself? Because you know who they are. Class number 1, I said, you know this, the stories you can tell about that point, they'll relate to. And they'll go, wow, are you in my head? Yeah, kind of, because I was in my head in the same situation. So hopefully you're seeing how these two wrap together. Your understanding of yourself and you identifying this seeker. Now, almost everybody I teach this to doesn't want to do it because my stuff helps everybody. Yes, I'm not disputing that. And you can't talk to everybody. If your message is, if you're a person with skin, then you should listen to this content that I have for you. Anything that tries to appeal to the masses will inherently not have individual attraction to it. So if you try to speak to a big market of people, you're not going to attract people in as well as you can to speak when you speak to a single person. But nobody wants to do that because it feels like we're saying, I don't want to help you, and we're stiff-arming people, right? Like, no, you're not worth my time, and I don't want to help you. And so we feel like we're excluding people. The next bullet is you're not excluding. You're just putting them in line. So if you have like 5 different types of people that you can serve, and you try to serve all 5 of them at once, especially if you're relatively new, in this industry, you're not going to get any of them. But if you put them in line and say, first, I'm going to teach the housewife, after I have that business designed and that content, then I'm going to teach the professional athlete. And once I have that built, then I'm going to teach the plumber. And then I'm going to teach the candlestick maker. And then I'm trying to throw in my nursery rhymes. But the idea is that you're just putting in people in line and speaking to them one at a time. You're not throwing any of them away. In fact, you're actually serving more of them by speaking to them one at a time. My philosophy when it comes to business, especially here in the coaching world, is to reduce as many variables as you can and then increase later. So if you have 4 different programs that you want to teach, 4 different seekers that you want to serve, that's fine. My advice to you is pick one to do first, because there's a lot of things you have to learn. There's a lot of variables you have to learn, especially if this is your first go in the coaching business. There are a lot of variables you got to learn. You got to learn nurturing. You got to learn content creation. You got to learn sales. You got to learn marketing. You got to learn taking care of your community. You got to learn operations. Regardless of how big your company is, even if it's just you, there are a bunch of different components that you need to learn. Let's just say, for argument's sake, there are 10 skills that you need to learn. If you try to serve 2 people at the same time, you're now playing with 20 skills, because each one of those people might need to be nurtured a little bit differently. The platform that you're using might be a little different depending on who they are. How you're selling, what you're pricing, all of those variables could be completely different with another seeker. So now instead of learning 10 things, you're trying to learn 20 things at the same time. And if you try to go after all 5 of those people, now you got 50 variables to juggle. You got to learn how to nurture those folks and those folks and those folks and those folks and this platform and their platform and their platform. It's exhausting. Here's another thing that most people don't know. A lot of the really big brands out there, they started serving a single person. Tony Robbins is probably the most recognizable coach and trainer in the world. What a lot of people don't realize is that when Tony Robbins was really young, he started serving a single person. He learned NLP, wanted to practice NLP, and he was making a bold claim. And he basically said, if I have my story and my memory is serving, if you have dealt with, I think he went after PTSD or some kind of diagnosis, and you've been struggling in therapy for a long time, give me 60 minutes and I'll cure you. That was his bold claim. And so he went after a single person with a single circumstance and then created a lot of success. Over the course of time, I don't know the exact details, but sometime later, he did an infomercial explosion. But he learned a lot of the things with a single person. Jack Canfield, a lot of you know Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul creator, the Success Principles. He served a single person. Jack Canfield was a teacher, and his single thing was how to build self-esteem in the classroom, and he sold that to teachers and schools. That's all he did for a long time. And then he started to teach self-esteem, and then he had this thing called Chicken Soup for the Soul that blew up. Now, if you look at Jack's platform or Tony Robbins' platform or Lisa Nichols' platform, who started out only in this area of Los Angeles, close to where I am, only serving teens and youth with the issues that she could help them with. After 10 years of that, she participated in the movie The Secret. Explosion. Now you look at her brand, and there's all kinds of people that fit into it. But that is so many iterations of the business. So what a lot of us do, that's a huge mistake, is we see the people that we want to emulate and we try to do it like they're doing it now without going through the steps that led them to get there. So I'll tell you that a lot of people, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of people, their biggest brands were started with a single client. So reduce as many variables as possible and make this simple. Once that gets successful, then go ahead and put more on top of it, right? I use the juggling as an analogy. Here's what I would suggest you. Juggle one ball first. Learn what it's like. Learn how high you can throw the ball. Learn what your hands do with one ball, and then put another ball in there. And now you got two balls in there. Once you get really comfortable with that and you got some control with that and you can throw one up high and get a drink of water, then throw a third ball in there. That's not what most people do. Most people try to learn Instagram and Facebook and teach all the things to all the people, all the while, you know, managing all the roles that they have in their life. And it's like, here's 13 balls, learn to juggle. That's why there's so much overwhelm. And people that are trying to do it that way, trying to jump into the success, it goes slower. And a lot of those people just never make it. They never make it out of there. There's so many quitting points along the way. So much frustration. And remember, I'm coming from you from all of my experience of what worked. So when we made over $300,000 in 18 months, we sold to one person. It wasn't who I thought it was going to be. It was actually a single woman in a direct sales company, specifically Mary Kay. And we made $300,000 selling to one person. Now, here's the cool thing. When you identify, actually, I think I'm going to hit this. So let me finish this handout, and then my next point is on the next page. When you're speaking to a single person, this final bullet on page 1, when you're speaking to a single person, and I don't mean a person that's not married, I mean an individual person. When you're speaking to a single person, two things happen. The energy that you give off is more attractive and it's more distinct. And then the second thing is you are more inspired to keep serving them. So it's helpful for them and it's helpful for you. And I want you to imagine a garden hose. If you've seen a garden hose, you got a little nozzle, right? And the nozzles usually have several different modes, whatever it's called. And one of them is like a spray mode. You take the water and you spray it everywhere. That's like trying to market to everybody. Not much gets accomplished with that kind of a spray. It's a soft spray. Or if you squeeze a little tighter or change the knob and you got that single stream, it's the same amount of water coming out, but it's more concentrated. And it can hit a wall, but here's the cool thing as it relates to marketing. When it hits the wall, then it splashes out. So where I'm going with this from a marketing standpoint, if your energy is laser focused on a single person, here's the phenomenon that I can't articulate in any intelligent way. The phenomenon is if you speak to a single person, you will attract a lot of other people with the energy of your message that don't match the person you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a woman who's dealing with these issues, you're going to attract some men. And the reason is, the more laser focused you are, the deeper you're going to go into their psychology. The more you tell your stories about where you were on your path, the more that other people who don't fit that profile will actually relate to the depth of your story, even though they don't match the details above. Please trust me that that's true, because it doesn't make sense to speak to a single person so that you can attract a lot of different people. It makes sense to speak to a lot of different people, but it doesn't work that way. I promise you, especially in coaching, especially in the climate that we're dealing with. The next bullet, or the next page here. Individuals buy coaching programs, not markets. That's just another piece of why we need to go after single people. There's a single person that's saying, yes, I want to buy this program. Yes, I want to watch this video. And so everything you do, you want to speak to the individual person as though you're having one-on-one communication. Very, very few people actually have fear of communicating one-on-one. Most people have fear of sales. They have fear of speaking in public. They have fear of big networking events. So when you speak one-on-one, you're actually removing yourself from a lot of your fears also, because now you're in human connection and just individual communication, which is really all that marketing is if you want to do it the right way for those of us that need for it to be aligned like this. These people that buy coaching, they buy coaching when they believe two things. When they believe that you understand them. Gone are the days that we need to impress people with what we've accomplished. People don't buy coaching packages when they understand us. They buy coaching packages when they know we understand them. And that's a massive distinction. It's a critical shift. And then the second thing, they need to know that you can help them. So you understand me and you can help me, I'm listening. That is more critical today than it ever has been before. And the reason we want to be transparent, the reason we want to share ourselves with people, and the reason we want to focus on somebody that's on an earlier, or is an earlier version of ourselves, walking the same path, ideally, is because we don't want to have to tell people. It's like the difference, the next bullet here. Do you want to tell people, let me ask you, if you're the consumer, if you're thinking about buying something, do you want to buy from somebody that says, you know what, I learned in a book how to use these skills and these tools and these exercises to probably help you? Do you want to learn from the person or do you want to coach with a person that learned some skills that could maybe help you? Or do you want to coach with the person that has been where you are? So in our marketing, it's I have learned these skills to help you versus I've been there. I've been there puts me at ease. If I know you've been there, I know you got me, I know you understand me, that puts me at ease because now I think I can trust you. That is everything nowadays. That kind of trust and rapport and connection is everything. So I like to put it this way, the next bullet. Your messaging must convince them of two things. I get you, and I got you. I get you, and I got you. I get you means I understand you. I got you means I understand me and my ability to help you. That's how these two things come together, right? Self, I got you. Seeker, I get you. Everything. And it's not that difficult. It's actually way more simple than what we see in terms of how to market and how to sell and all these things. Let's just simplify it. I get you and I got you. And even as I say that, the simplicity of the language puts me in a different place, like literally in my body. It puts me in a different place. So if we don't have the next bullet here, if we don't have certainty in this area that I'm talking about, in your seeker specifically for this class, if you don't have certainty in this area, then you won't be confident in converting people into clients. You can't. You cannot have a high level of confidence to convert people into clients and ask people for money and have them say, yes, I'll pay you money to help me change an area of my life. If you don't have certainty, they're not going to do it. Less nowadays than ever before, and it's going down, right? But when you have certainty, then the whole game changes. If you don't have certainty, and this is where most of the market is, people that are trying to become coaches, if you don't have certainty in what I'm talking about right now, the worst thing you can do is get more visible. It's the worst thing you can do because you don't have the certainty. And when you don't have the certainty and the confidence, think about this. If let's just say you're afraid of speaking in public. And I go, oh no, that's okay. Like, I'm just going to give you these rules and these tools, and you move this way and you don't put your hands in your pocket, and then you step forward this way and you imagine everybody naked and you speak to this person for 5 seconds, then you come back here, you speak to this person for 5 seconds, and you have a set of bullets all the time, and there's 3 bullets on each. And I give you all these rules, but I haven't helped you not be afraid of speaking in public. Even if I tell you the rules of how to speak, but we haven't cleared the fact that you don't like being in front of people, then do you want 1,000 people in the audience? Do you really want 10,000 people in the audience? So much of what most people are learning is how to get more visible when they're actually scared of visibility. They don't have the certainty yet to be visible. But yet they're learning how to sell and they're learning how to market, and we don't even know what we're marketing and what we're selling yet. We don't have the certainty yet. So those things are important, but they have to go in the right order. This is the foundational stuff. And I'm telling you this, very, very few people, in my opinion, my 15 years of experience, put much energy on what I'm talking about, and it's why most of them fail. They won't do this work. They either don't know about it or they know about it and they're like, yeah, but that's not the sexy stuff. I just want to learn how to do Facebook ads. Okay. This is the work, I promise you, that will set you apart, and it will put your energy in a whole different stratosphere than what most people are experiencing from other people that are just getting all of their confidence from skills and rules and tools. And if you have any kind of resistance towards sales, let me tell you, it is so much harder to sell a lower price product to a giant group of the wrong people or a general group. It's so much harder to do that than it is to find the right person and offer them the right solution and put whatever price tag you want on it. If you told me I need $10,000 by tomorrow, I would say find somebody and find the right person and offer them a $10,000 package. Don't try to sell $10,000 $1 packages. That's a nightmare. Don't try to sell 10 $1,000 packages. That's harder than finding one person, the right person with the right solution. That doesn't mean that every person that is your seeker is going to say yes to 10 grand, but it's a lot easier to speak to maybe 5 people that match your seeker and offer them a $10,000 package. One of them is going to say yes. If you have the certainty and you get them and you got them, then it is to just mass market these small price items, trying to juggle all of these variables. I'm telling you, I promise you, this is why I went bankrupt. This is why, you guys. I went from single focus to everybody. That's why I'm so passionate about this, because I fell all the way down that hill. And if I wouldn't have created the amount of success that I had for the first 18 months, I wouldn't have had anything to fall back on. And none of us would be speaking to each other right now. I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have had to quit. And most people's early experiences in the coaching world are like my second 18 months, but they don't have the first 18 months to draw back on. So that's why I teach this particular concept in so much depth from so many different angles, because I promise you, it's what's required. I'll tell you one quick story and then we'll wrap up here. One of the first times I was ever teaching this concept, I was in a room full of about 60 people. And one of the women in the room was telling me that she had a lot of resistance around sales and she didn't know how to put a message out there. And she just had a lot of, she didn't have much confidence in marketing and selling. So I brought her up to the front of the room and I said, who is it that you're wanting to serve? At the time, I didn't even have this language of the seeker, I don't think. I might have. Who is it that you're wanting to serve? And she said, teachers. And her body language was like, it was mousy, you know, it was like apologetic and I'm nobody and I suck and I can't sell and I can't market. That's what her body language was saying. And I said, who is your seeker? Who do you want to teach? And she said, teachers. And I said, are there any teachers in the room? And 3 women raised their hand. And I asked one of them, what question do you have as a teacher? And she said something about discipline. I really struggle with classroom discipline. This woman that was right next to me, Mousy, I said, what would you say to that? She goes like this. She steps forward and she goes, here's what I've learned in all my classroom experience. Discipline really comes down to 3 things. You really have to have rapport with the kids. You've got to set boundaries, but then the third one is so important. You have to enforce the boundaries, because if you don't enforce the boundaries, then you have no rules. And then she just morphed back into the mouse. It was crazy. And that's when I had no idea that was going to happen. I was watching it as confused and surprised as anybody else. Here's what happened. In that moment, somebody had a question and she stepped forward and she just adopted this powerful stance. I'm not exaggerating this. She adopted like this powerful stance and with total certainty said, I get you and I got you. Boom, boom, boom. And then once she was no longer serving and answering this woman's question, she morphed back into, I suck, I can't sell, I can't market. It's because her mind shifted once again to what can she gain instead of what can she give. And if we stay rooted in that, all the other details come so much easier. I promise you that. So let's get into, if you have any questions on any of this, those of you that are watching live, go ahead and type it in here and I'll get to them after. But let me go through the home play assignments. I have 2 of them for you. The first one is where if you're like anybody else, you're probably not going to enjoy this because there's going to be resistance. And the reason there's going to be resistance is you're not going to know how to answer a lot of these questions, maybe most of these questions. And that's part of the point. Okay. What I have here on the next, what is it, like 6 pages is who's your seeker. So what we're going to do from page 3 to page 8 is we're going to create a profile of your seeker. Some of these questions you'll know, many of them, maybe most of them you won't, but you still got to answer them. Please trust me. Trust my bankruptcy. Trust the millions of dollars that we've made and probably the millions of dollars that I've lost in this conversation. Please trust me. Don't let your intellect go, that doesn't make any sense. Trust me. The resistance is why most people don't do it. The fact that most people don't do it is why most people quit and most people fail, okay? Here's the thing. You're not trying to get the right answer. You're just trying to get an answer. I want you to create a profile. I guarantee you're going to be wrong. On many of these questions, you're going to be wrong. It doesn't matter that you have the right answer. What matters is that you create a profile. Because remember, you speaking to an individual person is more important than any of the details of the person. I promise you that. So go through this 6 pages. It's a lot of work for a lot of people. If you're not willing to give 6 pages of effort to try to understand the people that you're trying to serve, I don't know that you deserve success. That's how I feel. I'm a geek. I'm an old school, like get off my lawn kind of guy when it comes to coaching. If we don't care enough to give attention to these people, should they care enough to pay us? Hell no. So this is one of those things that I promise you will help if you slow down, give them the care. This is a human. Give them the care that they deserve. And I promise you it will come back to you. I promise you. So answer the questions. Does it really matter if their parents were divorced or still married? Nope. But it matters that you answer it. Does it really matter what you know about their political affiliation? Nope. But it matters that you answer it. Answer every single thing here. If you don't know, make it up. The point is not to get it right. The point is to get a profile in motion. And here's what I promise you. When you come up with your seeker profile, if you're doing this thing right, this thing called coaching, if you're doing it right, this will change. This will change. I've never met a single person who set out and identified a profile, and that profile is who they're still serving several years later. But what's the reason that we resist this is because we think, I don't want to write the wrong answer here. I'm telling you it's going to be the wrong answer. I'm telling you if you're doing it right, it's going to be the wrong answer. So hopefully if you understand what we're doing here from a different perspective, the reasons that you might feel resistance are the reasons for you to do it. I promise you. My content, my seeker, especially my content, I think I went through like 6 or 7 pieces of content that I only taught once. I think 2 of them I didn't teach at all. But I put all this time and energy into teaching this content to a single person. But as soon as I did it, I taught something else to somebody else who was wanting me to teach them. The point here is to get in motion, not to get perfect. So I'm telling you, the process is more important than the details. The process is more important than the details. That's homework number 1. Awesome. Darius says, I commit my day to answer these questions. I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate it on behalf of the people that are seeking the knowledge that you have in your head right now. That's what I appreciate, is that you just committed to them. You didn't commit to me. You didn't commit to this. You didn't commit to yourself. You committed to them. And you just said, I care about you so much that I'm going to spend some time and learn about you, right? Because I get you. After you do that, my second assignment to you is to interview some people. I call these seeker interviews. One of the most powerful things you can ever do. Seeker interviews. Because the most valuable asset you have in your business is the perspective of this person. This person's perspective, their view of the world, is the most powerful thing you have. It's the most valuable thing you have. So we want to ask them questions. So we're making it up, and then we're saying, who are some of these people? I want to talk to them. And you could just reach out to friends, people that you already know. You can reach out in Facebook groups if you're in groups. You can put a post out on Instagram. However you get the word out, I want you to ask people if you can interview them. Ask them for 15 to 20 minutes. If you can interview them, you've got some questions, you're rolling out a new program. Most people want to help. You give them an opportunity to help. A lot of people will go, yeah, I'll give you 15, 20 minutes. You can pick my brain. And you ask them these questions. These are condensed seeker interview questions. So I pulled some of the most important questions out of the 6-page profile. And you just sit down with people and you ask them these questions. You might not even ask all of them in 15 to 20 minutes, depends. But this is gold right here, you guys. If you know what people are just wanting, I just want somebody. Watch how simple this is. If you ask your market and you hear from their mouths, these people are saying, I just want somebody to teach me how to communicate with my spouse without yelling. And you hear several people say that. You know what you do? You create a program, and guess what the title is? How to communicate with your spouse without yelling. Because they told you what they want. They just told you what they want to buy. And then you give it to them. One of the things that totally changed my business in the first year, this is one of the things that skyrocketed our income. And we went from, I think the first few months that we started actually making money, like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And then I did a live event and we did $12,000. And it was like 15, 18. And then I did this and it went to 30,000. And then it didn't go under 30,000 for the rest of the year. And what I did is I sent out a survey to the people that were on my list. This was a small list at the time. And I said, what is it that you're wanting to learn? And I don't know, maybe 100 people answered that survey. This is back in the days when people actually answered emails and, get a lot bigger response rate. But 3 things stood out. in my market was women who were selling Mary Kay. 3 things stood out. The majority of the people, when I actually graphed it, and I put a bar graph, and it was like this answer, this answer, this answer, and then all the rest were low. They wanted to increase their sales, they wanted to increase their recruiting, and they wanted to increase their leadership. And they also wanted to stop sabotaging themselves. So I used to have a 1-day event. It was called like the Foundations of Success. And then I read those survey answers and I immediately changed the title of that event. Actually, before I did the event, I did a conference call, and it was called Stop the Sabotage: How to Skyrocket Your Sales, Recruit Rock Stars, or recruit like a rock star maybe, and explode your leadership, something like that. Those 3 things that they told me they wanted. There were hundreds of people on that line, and usually there would be like 30 or 40 people that showed up. When I gave them what they told me they wanted, they flocked towards it. And then I was smart. I said, I just changed the title and like quadrupled, if not more, the amount of attendance and sales. I think I'm going to change the title of my live event as well. So then my live events were Stop the Sabotage Live, How to Skyrocket Your Sales, Recruit Like a Rock Star, Explode Your Leadership. And it was so powerful of a draw. Why? Because I named it exactly what they told me they were looking for. So what are people actually typing into Google? If you know what your seeker is typing into Google, that's the name of your program. Package it in what they want to open. And some of these questions are like, I think there's one, what product would you love to buy if someone were to create it just for you? You guys, they're telling you what they'll buy. They're telling you what they want. And that doesn't mean that every single person is going to pay for your program or hire you as a coach. But we have so many people whose goal was to do market research seeker interviews. And at the end of the interview, the person's like, you're not just going to leave me hanging, are you? Can you help me do that? And they go, yeah. Well, then I want to hire you. Like without even offering, a lot of people got clients by doing market research one-on-one interviews because the people wanted help with this stuff. And some of them are like, I don't know. I don't have a package or anything. And then they go to me and like, somebody just wanted to hire me. What should I offer? Whatever. So a lot of times you just open up those desires and people will actually hire you. I'm not going to promise that, but it happens quite often actually. So that's the homework. If you're serious about doing this work, if you're serious about getting the body, getting the confidence, getting the certainty, this will do it for you. At least this will be the first step for you, combined with who you are, an earlier version of yourself on that path. I promise you, when these things come together, it's magic. And now you're ready to start moving forward into the marketing piece and the visibility piece and where to find these people and what to do with them. And I'll talk about that on class number 3. So let me look at some of these comments before we wrap up here. Billy Council. My man, you're welcome, Darius. Thank you for that. Thank you all for your input, whether you contributed in the chat or however. Michelle dropping F-bombs. Way to stay on brand. You didn't actually spell it out, so no worries. I love that, though, because it shows your energy. Like, we really got to give a damn. Cool. So if there are any questions that you have, go ahead and ask me via email, catch me on social media, however you can. And I will see you in class number 3. Take care, everybody.